This video is to talk about the changes that are needed for the file control. So we're going to go to that now. So on the file control, you see a regular list, which looks good. This file control is going to be for the user who's logged in, which is, there's no change there. What I would like to see you do here is to put the color status like we have when you go to warehouse receipts. You see how warehouse receipts has a color status? On file control, I want to do the same thing. You can pick a color, like deleted could be red and created could be green or something like that. I'm used to seeing the Bootstrap colors. I don't know what color schemes they have in material design, so we'll go from there. I did want to point out there's a menu up here, a shortcut menu, and I've attached a color, I'm sorry, an icon for that. So if you could put an icon right here on this side just to match the icon, so you can try to find out what the icon is. Okay, I know I told you to take it off originally because it was like contact, but now we're just making a bunch of edits. Okay, so I'm going to go through the app, make sure, and the archived, there's nothing there, and deleted, there is something. So over here, this restore button, if we want to leave it with that icon, which I'm totally fine with, that when you click on it, I guess it does work. Okay, so I thought it didn't work before. All right, so never mind. And then what is this button for? Archive. So if we put that, so if I click on this one, that's the one that doesn't work, right? So when I click on archive, it doesn't work. So let's go ahead and make that work, okay? All right, now file control. We're going to go inside and edit a file control. This one happens to be deleted. And if it really was deleted, it should say so be in the deleted section, not in the active section. So I think that's one of the things we need to change if it is deleted. But if you happen to restore it by hitting the restore button, it should say active, or reactivated might be, and that word. Let's see if I can bring up a notepad. How it's reactivated. Okay, that would probably be there because now it's been reactivated. Okay. Um, okay, so far. All right, so let's go into one of these. This distribution icon that I told you about, the customer says that looks like a Wi-Fi icon. It's because it is. So I'm not sure if there's another icon, and if you happen to see it and want to make a recommendation, then great. If not, I can take a look as well. But I just couldn't find an icon. But uh, what we do know about this is this flag will stay constant and it should save. Okay. And what they told me this button is used for, okay, is that when I click on air, that's the magic button that we were talking about. So that when they click on air, it will move, not copy. It'll move from file control to the air module list. Okay. And they want it to actually move the record, not just copy. So it's going to be easier to maintain for us. So I'm hoping that you'll get into the C# code and make the changes for the API as well. And we'll go from there. Alrighty, so what else? I'm on Air module. I'm going to go back to to my file control and okay, so let's go back into clicking on the edit. So now we know what this button does. It will, so we would click on it, then hit the save button, and that should move it. Now, we may want to wait until you leave the screen, or when you hit the save button, did it makes them leave the screen. But I have to tell you more about this screen because it is important. The client, apparently for all pages that have a client, a shipper, and consignee, so this is all pages, they want to have each one on its own line. So whether it's file control or contact or warehouse receipt, things like that, because they don't want it to be cut off. So now we know. They want the blue plus on all blue pluses to be a little smaller. I asked them about the mobile, and they told me that they will only be using these on the desktop, and when it comes time for a mobile page, when like in the warehouse receipt, then we'll make the pluses bigger for them to press on. And I'm assuming at the moment, when it comes to warehouse receipt, that we're going to use the same screen for the desktop and for the mobile. So perhaps on the warehouse receipt that you do not change the size of the plus, but we'll see. For now, put client on its own line and then extend the line all the way over. The shipper will go on the next line and the consignee will go on the next line. Extend all the way over. So I'm going to flip over to see the file control that we originally came up with, right? So other than this icon, this is not important anymore. This, whatever you see here I'm pointing to right now, that's not important because what we talked about was when you click on this icon here and it is saved, it'll go to that module. So when we do have the shipping, which is supposed to come, the customer is really excited. It's like, we have to start working on the shipping soon. I'm like, okay, let's get the air part done first. But then when you click on ship, it'll go here, trucking will go here. We'll have different screens where they will go. And just so you know, when I go to air module, this is basically the form is kind of like the file control. Just take a look at it. I got priority, reference number. Okay, so maybe I can open up another window with that, and it's okay. We have to figure out this thing. I was doing some research on that. It's a routing issue. One of the previous UI guys that I don't use anymore was saying that I would have to install Node server, Node.js server, and I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm going to log on again here. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let's go to file control. So what I see is we have active archive and deleted. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that we'll only need to keep these buttons here, and we will not need them in Air Module. The reason for that is because Air Module will only work with active records. So the way we have it right now, we're going to keep it that way. No changes needed. But you could see there's a last status here, but that's only for file control. And there's a wrench and things like that. So I think we're good so far. So we don't need to change anything. But if you look at the two screens, you've got a create a date and a priority. No priority here. I guess that I didn't give you that. So we're going to go ahead and follow along with what the spreadsheet says. Here we have reference number. In the file control we have ref no. So I guess to be consistent, we should name them the same. I don't really have a preference, so pick one. Reference number, ref no. Once we put it someplace, we want to put it everywhere. Looks like client name. We got client name with a capital N and a client name with a small n. So let's go ahead and fix that. Shipper name, capital N, no small. Let's fix that. Consignee name, same thing. And so we're good as long as the search is working. Yep, it works. So we're fine with that. Once we get to be in a lot of records, we're going to need to do something with the paging like you talked about, but that's not for this video. So I'm going to go back to the file control. Because that's where this video is for, and I'll make another one for other things. Okay, so wanted to show you something that is confusing to the customer and me as well. But I'm on this white card here, which is fine, okay? But when I scroll, I'm scrolling with the mouse ball, it doesn't move. I have to come over here and scroll it. And I don't know if there's something that you can do to do that. I'm sure you can do. What I've seen happen in the past is that some developers will make the white card only as big as the screen and put a scroll bar on the white card. But I'm just saying, if we can fix that on all screens, that'll be nice, because most people are used to, you probably can hear me scrolling, I just can't get it to move, okay? So that's something there, okay? Now, this little delete button right here, I don't know what it's for. What does it do? I'm assuming you're trying to delete this entire record. If that's the case, we want to remove this delete icon. I had asked the customer, we did not click on it, but I'd asked him, do you want the delete button? And he says, well, if it's to delete this entire form, we don't want it. Okay? They're used to having other buttons, which I'm not asking you to change, but they're used to saying, what if I wanted a new one? Well, you would go to the back and create new, and then you'd get a new one. Okay? And they're like, oh, okay, I don't know if adding a new button in there would make any sense. You have back and another new. We would just refresh the page and go to the new page instead. So let's think about that. But do definitely delete this or remove this icon, because when you are here, you can delete. And they do know now that the delete button is a virtual delete, which we're going to keep. Okay, so let's go back into here. See, I can't scroll, so I gotta fix that. All right, now the grid, okay? We need to put your inline edit pop up. So when you click on it, it needs to pop up, okay? And this public and this email, these are check boxes. So they need to be check boxes. If you choose to keep them as read only on this grid, but when you click the edit here, it pops up, then we want to be able to click on the checkbox so that they set their appropriate values. And of course, I know this is fake data, and we need to go ahead and fix that. So like when I just click the delete button and it takes me back, I need to have that delete the record. And this delete here can be a real physical delete. Whereas the other ones they were talking about, like on this file control, was a virtual delete. This can be a real delete. And then edit will then pop up. These two items are going to be checkboxes. And then the status should be a status of some sorts, maybe like a drop down that we have a table for statuses. So you need to look into the database. This is the wrong, different customer. Okay, so you need to look into the database. I don't think I've added you to the database yet, so I'm going to. And you can see there is a status column somewhere. I don't know, you look at it. Last status date, last status, and then we would probably have a list of statuses here. And those are kind of funny statuses. So we may come up with another status, but right now, if we can go ahead and program to that status. Oh, scratch that, look at that. I see another one here called contact log status. So if there is not a web method there, we'll need to create one. But one way to find out, if I can go to exabytewebservice.com and Swagger, and look at that, there's one here. List contact log status. So you should be able to do a get, and you have your items that are going to be the drop down. Okay? So what that means is, I'm going to find the right screen. This screen is sitting on top of this screen. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to need a new button. There's no new button here. I need to be able to add a record so that the pop-up will happen. So I can add a new one. And on the file control example I've given you, you can see there's a status in color, that we need to set the status in color. But once you save it, and if you do save it without clicking one of these, it will go to the file control. Once you click these items, it'll go to the appropriate space. And there's tables, or should be tables, for all those. If you do see that we need to create a table for holding the ship or the other ones, then yes, we can go ahead and create a new table. It wouldn't hurt for us to talk about it, of course. And this created 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm assuming that's a date. I think what we need to do is we need to follow along with the example. So let's go back to that. Okay, and then you can see this created date activity. So you have an activity. Okay, that's good. So that activity should be a text entry box, and it should be allowed to. They're not going to put a lot of text in there, but they do need to put something. Okay, and that can be in the pop-up. The drop-down value can be in the pop-up. That's a status. Should be a status there. And checkboxes. So you can put, they don't have to be color checkboxes like this. It could be something, but it does need to have some kind of button to add. If you need to put some kind of divider line, like a bar or something like that, so you can see the difference, because right now it doesn't look like there's a difference. Okay, and it kind of does here, but not really. So we need to have some sort of, maybe just a bar or an HR line or something like that. Not all the way across, but just something here. You've done that in other screens. Okay, so other than that, that screen looks pretty much the same, which is good. You can see these buttons that they were talking about that we're not using in this screen. Okay, so we're moving forward. I do want to show you these this is what I was trying to tell you in a text email, which text emails are kind of hard, but we need to have an entry date, just like this example. So that has to go right on top where the client is and push everything down. We need to have a reference number. That reference number is driven by here. So let me go to File Controls, and there's a File Controls, and we talked about this on the phone. And the customer is the customer, and he's telling me what he wants, and I have to agree, just because. But when I hit Try New, okay, or Try Now, it says you can see this one's number 28. If I hit it again, it's 29. So what that means is, and he was worried about me skipping numbers as well, and so were you, and so was I, whatever, okay? So what that means is when the customer clicks the new button here, okay, you're going to fetch the next number here, and either you or me on this fetch, we need to go ahead and have it. If you're going to do a post from the client, you can do that. That'll probably be faster for you to go ahead and post, as long as there's no required fields. Or we could change the API so that it writes the record directly to the file control. So if I were you, probably, it would probably be faster, because it just sounds like faster for you to do a post directly from here. So as soon as you come in, you got the new ID and you got the date. If you go back to here, you can see that it's provided a date, and the time here still is apparently in UTC, because it's 8 o'clock here and it's 4 hours. So somewhere I got my timer off, but it's supposed to be UTC, I'm assuming. We're at -4 apparently. I don't know. We'll go with it for now. And so this entry date and the reference number are both going to be used. And the reference number is here. And the entry date, you don't have one. So we need to put that. What I think you had was a start date. And we could use that, but we don't want to call it start date. We want to call it entry date. Now, if there's a start date field and you want to use the field that's already programmed and just label it as entry date, that's fine. We can do that. But we're going back to here, entry date at the top, reference number will be next, and then the due date that you have here, they want to label it as required ETA and make it required. You know, you have a required field, but we need to make sure. See, you can see here, if I zoom in here, you can see how these are grayed out, and you have a style where you disable them and they're sort of gray, but they do need to kind of like see that it's grayed out and it's disabled. So if we can do something like that, not necessarily just like this box, but to make it look like it is, you know, disabled. Again, it could be a training issue for the customer, so we're going to find out. But do something so that at least make the screen look like it used to. Entry date, reference number, required ETA. Now, this particular one here is my fault because I put that there, but they want it on 3 separate lines. But what I didn't tell you is that when they do a search for these client, okay, and you start doing a search, let's say if I type in pair, you know, I get Shakespeare, okay. Now, what they told me, and this is going to be for every time that you're searching a client, every single time you search for a client, every single time you search for a shipper, every single time you search for a consignee, it's always going to be the same. So if you happen to have a component that's doing that on all pages, it'll probably save a lot of time in programming, I'm hoping. But let's go to the contact list so we can take a look at the database. If I look at the contacts, maybe, okay, and I come over to a type, look at this column here. It says type of name, consignee, shipper, consignee, courier, shipper, consignee. Okay, so far so good. Got that? I'm going to minimize that. So when you're in this box, you can make a change to the API, and then we can publish the API, or you can commit to the API, send me a note to publish to the API, and I can do that. Or I can give you access to the server as well. But, you know, it should be a controlled push, and I have no problem pushing the new code. But I just need to have this fixed. So instead of searching every record inside the contact table, and it might be a very simple fix for me to do for you. So either push it back to me or go ahead and make the change yourself in the web service. So I don't know if I have it open right now, but the idea is that we would put a filter for the client, and then we have to make a new web method for shipper and a new web method for consignee, and only search shipper and only search consignees. Okay, but that said, we're going to search for the client, and what they would like to do is make this box as long as the box there, and what they want to do is they want to pull up the address parts. So if you have an address 1, 2, 3, city, country, state, you know, whatever address parts there are, if they are in an international country that doesn't have a state, then we would not include the state. So that would be something to do in the C# Web API code. If it does have a state, if it's a US address, then it does have a state, then we would include it. And we would know that by the field being blank, for example. So we wouldn't include it. So what they would like to do, and I'm glad that we do use the GUIDs like we talked about, and I'm glad we do have the plus like we talked about. And I told them what that does. But they want to be able to show the entire address. And then when you select it, it's going to select the name and the entire address. And although really what you're saving is the client GUID, and you know you're saving probably the text as well. So we may have to make the field bigger in the database, because over here the shipper name is only 50 characters and the client name is only 50 characters. So I'm assuming that's going to be like 255 characters. So we're going to need to make it bigger. And then what does that mean is that we have to reset the model. The model for any framework, I don't even have it open. Okay, so the model for Entity Framework is database first, so we'll have to make the change on that. So again, ask me, I can help out. I'm just telling you what we need to do so that we're all on the same page. Same thing for shipper. When we do a search for shipper, we talked about the filter, having to make another web method, and then we're going to show the entire address inside here. And then we're going to save the entire address picked, and then also save the GUID, so that when we come back, you don't have to do any lookups. Okay, back to the control here. So required ETA would go just like that, so, you know, on the screen. Client is going to go a separate line, shipper a separate line, consignee separate line, just like we talked about. These two can go on the same line, which you do have, but they're like way at the top. We want it to be, again, under the because consignee is going to be on a separate line. You're going to put it underneath there, POs and release numbers, and then order numbers. Somehow you have their order numbers beneath release reference number. Reference number should be above. So please, if you don't have the file control, please go ahead and make the fields in the same order. Don't just pick any order, and we should be okay. And then leave a comment. They don't have a comment here, so we don't need a comment here. You can remove that, leave a comment. And then I think we're going ahead, moving along. Okay, so you can see there's a new button here. That's why they were asking, where's the new button? So if you put a new button here, it would give them. Now, we are editing, and you have it say at the top here, new file control, which we're editing, not new. Okay, so if I were to go and click new, it says new file control. Okay, that makes sense. But if I'm editing a file control, oh, look at that. This time it says edit. I wonder why. Okay, never mind. Maybe we can take a look at that. I don't know. Okay, so we talked about this needing a pop-up. And when you hit the button here, this would need a pop-up as well. Okay, you would create the user. I'm sorry, scratch that. You would create the client, and then it would be some information. The guy was telling me that it was probably going to be more work, you know, but we can put, I think we can put some fields, not all the fields, but you can see that there are certain fields that are necessary. And you know, way down here, you've got contacts, and I'm going to go to that contacts page. So what could happen is either you have the plus, and the plus brings you to the contact page, which is here. They can create a new contact, and when you hit new contact, so you have a contact page. I don't know if you want to just give them this same contact page as a pop-up, you know, because they could fill in all these fields, and there's a save command that you guys are going to work on anyway. So I know you're working on this page anyway. So if it's something you can make a pop-up with the existing fields without having to create a new screen, I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out there as an example. Okay, and back to the file control, edit, and so we kind of need something to do that. This seems to work, okay, and these are just text boxes, don't need a comment. Okay, so I think that wraps this up, and when you make this change here, it needs to happen on every one of the pages. So hopefully that is a component that can be reused over and over and over again. They do like the ability to send a message to the customer. Going back to my example. Okay, so this update client, they can add all kinds of messages. This adding the line will not send a message. It's public, meaning that it will be publicly available to the client. And I'll tell you more about that later, but let's just go ahead and make that happen, have it so it's public. And then email, and I'm going to go back on what I just said because here's email. If the email is set, checked on, and you haven't saved the row yet, then it would email the client. So I apologize for that confusion. If the email is checked off, turned off, then they do not want to email the client. Now, when you post this record, the emailing should happen automatically, which it's not. And I need to have the other C# developer give me an explanation on what he has done with the email. He had built a whole component, a web API, sorry, and it's supposedly working through the email engine and stuff. And we have a whole tracking thing that I've got to learn about. So what we could say is when you post, it's going to send the email out based on the flags that you set. So let's, unless you actually do take that part on and do it, we're going to say that that's what's going to happen. And then this button here, we need a button for that. You can see there's a fine line here separating the two, like boxes. So maybe we can put a box or something to separate the visual idea. And then this button here, update client, what that will do is it'll send the entire list. And that's another method that we'll have to create. And then you can click on and then basically do a post against that. And it will just tell the back end to send the entire list, which it'll send everything that hasn't been sent. But that's another story. But we do need a button and a separation of ideas, because you can see it's not separating. Again, we don't need to have this button, not important anymore. This little van, not important. You have that, everything else is done. So I think this file control is done for now. If you don't have the file control list, then please let me know. That was just showing you the enter. This page here shows you what I was trying to get you to do, which I think you have already done, majority, but these are checkboxes. And I think we're good to go. I don't think there's anything else to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and do those changes. I'm sorry it was long video here, but I was talking about a lot of things that I wouldn't have to say on another video, like the searching, putting client, shipper, and consignee all in their separate lines, making the lines exactly longer, the pop-up. I won't have to say those on another video. Okay, very good. Thank you very much.